good evening, good afternoon from wherever you would be listening. And today is a very special day for me. The reason being because today is the last concluding session of the Peaceful Mind Mentors, which we started off in April during the time of the lockdown. It was a very sudden initiative, and surprisingly, we got very important people on board. And today we have the concluding session of it, the last session of the year, which we are concluding with Honorable Leona Romeo, the former Prime Minister of St. Martin. Hello, ma'am.
Hello, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to all.
How are you, ma'am? And how was your trip to Florida, first of all?
It was great. It was great. It was interesting.
So just to tell our listeners and to people who will view this video, Honorable Leona Romeo is the former Prime Minister and also held a very diplomatic position. She started off not as a politician, but ultimately she became a politician. She has a graduation in political science, if I'm not wrong, and master's in international relations. And she's very passionate about gender transformations and digital transformation, and especially her role during the hurricane in the island. So, ma'am, first of all, I would like to come to the very initial part. How is it to form a government, and how is it to become a prime minister of an island country?
Well, basically, our processes is quite a bit different when it comes to the role of prime ministership. Unlike the British Islands, in St. Martin, we have elections where the people choose the parliamentarians. The parliamentarians then in turn chooses the ministers that will go in the positions of in those seats, and we have 7 ministers. And so the ministers are not elected into the positions that they hold. So the prime minister is not an elected position. Now, an elected person can be, an elected parliamentarian can become a prime minister, but also the prime minister and ministers can be appointed.
So, so you were saying that one who becomes an MP either has to leave the seat of an MP and then become a minister if they want to become the government?
If they want to become a minister, indeed, there is that option.
Okay. In some of the democracies, we see that, there is an elected person and then he only becomes the minister, for example, like in India.
Correct.
For example.
Yes, in the British country.
Difference? Is it a difference? Is it a merit? Is it a
demerit? Indeed, I see it as a big difference in the sense of the prime ministers I would say in India and most British countries, they have more power. A prime minister in those countries can fire the entire ministry. Ministers, they have a lot of say, and their say is the last word. Mm-hmm. In our system, it's a bit different. You have the prime minister cannot fire just like that. You have the opportunity to, you are the chair of the Council of Ministers. That's where your power lies, where ultimately you have the last say. But in actuality, you have in equal power amongst all ministers. But that is not how it is in other countries. So the prime minister in other countries, they come in with their cabinet. So the prime minister have the power to hire and fire who they want and can choose the cabinet that they want. And that cabinet consists of various ministers, but that's not how it is in our system. Our system is completely different than that.
Okay. And I was reading one of your articles, ma'am, where you were speaking to one of the business magazines in the Caribeans. You had an experience with the hurricane, right? During your cabinet and your government. Could you please share your experience and what measures did you take during that time?
Well, one of the things I came in after the hurricane, I was asked to become a prime minister, hold that position. One of the key things that was quite important for us at that time was to look at the areas that we were weak in and how to strengthen those areas. So one of the first things that I did at that time was basically gather all of the emergency support groups. And we sat and we did an analysis of the hurricane, of how we responded to the hurricanes. We looked at those gaps and we tried to realistically look at the gaps, identify the areas that we went wrong and how we can improve them, and then work on those areas. That was one of the first things that I did, because it's important to know the areas that you weren't strong in, to improve, to better improve. Indeed, it's a learning experience. We have at that time had never experienced such a devastating hurricane to that capacity. And it was a lot of changing. And a lot of times what we did was try to foster closer relationships, not only with the Netherlands, but with our Caribbean partners as well, and to make sure that we can better and quicker response to a disaster when it occurs.
Okay. So after the hurricane, till when did it last? I mean, your disaster management thing, because you stepped down after 1.5 years, if I'm not wrong.
Correct. I stepped down after a certain time, and what I did was, I didn't get your question. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just asking. You stepped down immediately because being a prime minister, obviously, it's a lot of responsibility. So you stepped down because of the measures you had taken, or something, or it was
No.
just no.
Well, in actuality, the government got a vote of no confidence. And at the time, we had a serious struggle in our parliament, and understanding and working with the World Bank and what it means to work with the World Bank, and the program that was decided for us to follow. And funding was given to us from the Netherlands. The Netherlands were very supportive in assisting us after the hurricane, and they placed the World Bank as I wouldn't call it the mediator, but the entity that would distribute this money for St. Martin. Of course, being that it was St. Martin's first time dealing with the World Bank, we had some challenges understanding how the World Bank functions, and looking at our capacity, human capacity, and also the lack of expertise within St. Martin. It was quite challenging. Nevertheless, we were very much determined to execute the things that needed and make the necessary changes that were needed to get the island more resilient, back on its feet. And of course, we had the huge problem of Parliament understanding that. And yes, I did not have the support of Parliament, and they called a vote of no confidence. And based on that, we had a new election, allowing the people to decide exactly what they want and choose the direction that they want to go into. And yes, indeed, I decided also to resign, even though I was asked to stay on until a new government would come in. But I decided to resign and, leave the position at that time.
Before just a question popped out in my head. I'll ask you let me ask you one more regarding this. How has been your relationships with the other Caribbean countries and the CARICOM? Because you people come under the CARICOM. Was CARICOM also very supportive to you during that time when you were in the government?
Well, I must state that we're not under CARICOM, but we are looking at the time, and it's still a process ongoing, looking to become an associate member of CARICOM. I don't know what the process is right now, but I know during my tenure, that is something that was even started before I became Prime Minister, and I continued the process, but the relationships were quite good. I must state that I was able to get the Netherlands to sign off on an agreement with SEDEMA. And so we are part of the SEDEMA group. So when there is a disaster, that we're able to assist each other, built a lot of relationships with the various Caribbean countries, especially the SEDEMA group, and looking at how we can assist each other during, before, and after a hurricane. So the relationships are quite good.
That's nice.
Because we're all in the same boat. We're all in the same boat. So together we are stronger.
Yeah.
And what you would find is, and one of the main things of SEDEMA is getting the Netherlands to assist after a disaster. And the Netherlands helps a lot of islands, and they did that after Irma as well, Hurricane Irma. And SEDEMA, or the agreement with SEDEMA, just cemented that more. And that treaty just cemented the fact that they would get, or always get, the assistance of the Netherlands.
SEDEMA, ma'am, is a group of nations, or it's an agreement? It's a document.
SEDEMA is a Caribbean disaster. I can't remember the acronym, but it's the Caribbean disaster. It's about for Caribbean disaster something management.
Okay, SEDEMA. Okay, and now my next question, which popped out in my head while you were speaking, how has your role has changed, or after being the prime minister, you stepped down, you took a sabbatical also, as we discussed before. Um, your work profile has changed. So, I mean, how has your role changed after being a prime minister now to a former prime minister? You're still involved in Caribeans, not in politics, but generally as an advocacy or something. I mean, what is your next project?
My next project. Well, the role as prime minister and transitioning out of that role, yes, indeed, I did go on a sabbatical. And it was a time to really internalize and look at areas that I would like to grow in. I must state that I am a civil servant even before becoming prime minister. And I went back into the civil corps. I believe that I understood government because I was a civil servant, or I am a civil servant. So it makes certain things more easier. Right now I work as a senior project leader for the Department of Health, Labor and Social Affairs. I work in the staff bureau with the Secretary General. The project that I'm working on is the Social Registry project, which is a part of centralizing information so that we can quicker respond after a hurricane, or even do better assessment before a hurricane. And so the idea is to have understanding our population, understanding how we can identify and measure who are the most vulnerable and in need after a disaster strikes, and how we can quicker respond to such. So for me as an individual, it doesn't matter what position I am in, I always grow wherever I am planted. The project, that is my project work-wise, but personally, I have always been a champion behind many areas. And it's one of the things that I'm looking at is digitization. And even as prime minister, it's something that I also have championed, and I was able to acquire funding for such through the same World Bank Trust Fund relationship with the Netherlands. And it's something St. Martin is also working on. And I'm very proud of that because it is the direction. Hence, this is a topic that I chose to speak about and discuss today.
Yes. So my question first relating to the theme, what you had chosen, the gender transformation and digital transformation. We know about gender inequalities. It's a long prevalent thing everywhere. So, ma'am, gender inequalities is a lot prevalent in Caribbeans, or it is less than you see in Asian countries or something like that?
Well, it was not surprising when I started to do more in-depth research in the gender relations as it relates to digitalization. There is no difference. I noticed that it's a global issue, and there are reports out there on such that women are less, or girls are less, females are less are less able, or they are not exposed as much to go into the direction into digitization, which is in the STEM areas. So the areas of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And this is something that it's a global issue, and there's no difference in the Caribbean with such. And that is something that I want to champion, the promotion of digitization and the promotion of females entering into that direction.
So during your tenure, were you able to, tackle the questions of gender inequalities in any area? I mean, I'm just talking about gender inequalities in general, which is prevalent in today's world.
Gender inequality is something that it's also part of the SDG goals, and it's something that the country itself is part of the country's program, and it's something that we were working on. I prefer not to speak on what is being worked on right now, but because it is a SDG, I believe that it will continue, and it's something even before my tenure. So of course, most countries or all countries are working on the SDG goals. So more specifically, what we find is because of this pandemic, countries, businesses, governments are forced to digitize or go digital. So it's something that is inevitable, and the pandemic has exposed many on this matter. It has opened the eyes of many that were hesitant to reinvent the way of thinking, to reinvent their business processes, their business models, the way they treat customers. And how I tie gender into that, looking at the Caribbean, how females will play a role, and what can we do to address that specific issue within the Caribbean countries, because it is something that is well known abroad that it is a problem. There's a lack of gender equality. Girls are more prone to go into specific work areas, and boys are more prone to go into, whether it is science and technology, robotics. So I know that it can be changed, because there are countries that are making progress tremendously, countries such as Estonia and some places in the USA and in Taiwan. And I'm sure India probably has some programs as well. I know that there's a program in South Africa that are promoting young girls to head into that direction. I think it is something that is inevitable. And you will see that the younger girls are exposed, and this is why I like the Estonian model. The younger that young females are exposed to STEM programs, because STEM programs give you the opportunity to be exposed to the science, technology, engineering, and math activities, which helps them promote their creativity. It opened doors for young girls to say, oh, wow, I didn't know I could do this, or I am just as good as a boy, or even better. And I got introduced to a group in Estonia that is called the Unicorn Squads. And what they're doing over there is introducing robotics and technology to girls from the ages of 7 to 12. And more specifically, they are separating boys from girls. The idea is girls learn better and boys learn better as well when the group are separated. And when they introduce that, it helps girls to go into the direction of the robotics and technology. And you have to remember, Estonia is a young country, and they made the sound decision based on survivability, based also on economics and the experiences that they have to go into digitizing. They introduced, I believe it was in 1997, they had this Tiger Leap program where in secondary schools, children were already programming, and now they have even started at a younger age. And when I got introduced to a group, Proud Engineers, and they gave me that concept that they're doing, that Unicorn Squad concept, I said, well, why can't we do that in the Caribbean as well? It is something that is missing. It will help stimulate the minds of young girls to head into the direction, because why it's needed, it's inevitable, and we will need young female minds to help us sustain it, because technology keeps growing and growing. And again, we can close that gender gap when it comes to digitalization and being a part of the entire digital transformation.
So basically, you are just saying, I mean, it's a concept in psychology that men are more rational and logical than females. So it's like now, though I don't believe in it, I say that everything is equal. But exactly what you're saying. Even in India, I mean, during the lockdown, obviously, a lot of things got digitalized. Even the
Yes,
payments and your television, obviously, is digitalized. Everything, I mean, it's now getting more and more digital. But I think it's also the way that how we train our human resources to use this digital thing in every sector. You know, there is a
indeed,
very new thing which has come up in India. This something called coding. There's a new program which has
indeed,
come up, coding,
yes.
and the parents are sending off their kids to just learn coding. They are saying
Exactly.
coding is going to be the new future and the new career.
Exactly. Now, and this is part of the STEM programs as well. So the coding is also part of it. And it's something very, very important because, again, technology will just keep advancing and you will need persons to understand the developments of it and look at ways to improve the processes, your businesses. It's something that is inevitable. And there's no difference within what's happening in the outside of the Caribbean. People are experiencing the same thing. And COVID, the pandemic, has just exposed us to say, hey, let us really look at the way we are doing things, because you never know. And no one expected the severity of this pandemic. No one expected to be the whole, in almost the entire population, global population, working from home. And some countries or some businesses have found that because they weren't prepared, they were falling back. They lost business. They
Yes.
are, so it's a ripe moment to also start strategically thinking about the way forward, because moving forward from here, we don't know, we cannot anticipate what tomorrow will bring, but what we can do is learn from this experience and know that we can better prepare our youth to head into that direction. And of course, I am promoting young females to head into that direction.
Even many people have taken this COVID as negative, but I think I was screaming when the pandemic. I said, this is the time you sit back, think, you strategize, and you invent something new. It's a very good opportunity for the world to bring up something
Indeed,
new and also to learn from the experiences. How to be prepared for the unexpected, because you
indeed.
never know when the next pandemic is going to come.
There's a cliche saying, in every crisis, there is an opportunity.
Yes.
And indeed, this pandemic has brought many opportunities. It has even forced some of the challenges with digitizing in the past were, there were too many silos. If I can use, I would use the government strategy in general, where some ministries would say, well, I'm not sharing information with a different ministry. And they're holding their information as one. But what this pandemic is showing persons, and I guess what people have been explaining for quite some time and no one has been listening, or people have just been stubborn, is that we need each other. And in order to have better operational excellency, we have to start doing data synchronization, sharing information, so that we can be able to better service the client.
True. Ma'am, what are your views on artificial intelligence? I mean, you're talking about digitalization of everything. Um, I just wrote an article on, but it was my personal opinion on the dangerous showers of artificial intelligence, that people would lose human touch. Because being like person like me, I'm little of a manual person than more of a laptop person, you can say. I like copy and diaries and pens. So many people
Well,
just so what are your views on it?
I'm very much a promoter of artificial intelligence, but of course there needs to be a balance. I always believe in a balance. Even persons are thinking that there's, in some areas, we do need artificial intelligence in the sense of in order to be able to work more efficiently.
True.
But for some professions, I would say like yours, you still need that human touch. So there needs to be a balance. There should always be a balance.
But
But there
ma'am,
are definitely benefits in artificial intelligence.
today's youth, especially like they call them millennials, for example. Not very old, young than me, but yeah, somewhere near to our age, only like a 25, 26. They're too much engrossed in artificial intelligence. Even I know some of the people, their lights and their fans are also digitalized. You know, they do everything with the iPad. How far that is, do you
I
think
can
is?
tell you this, Professor, you have to get with the times because it will not change. There is a need, it's not going to change. So it pushes us in our age bracket to either catch up or
Yeah.
stay in tune with the times, or else we will fall back. And, indeed, the millennials and even the ones after them will be even more advanced. I think that we have to be always cognizant of the fact that technology will always continue to grow. And therefore, it is our responsibility from now to start being thinking about innovative ways to stay up to date, or else we will fall behind. It's the same thing like this pandemic. When I said the pandemic has exposed us to many things, one being that if we don't stay ahead or stay in advance or stay up to date with technology, we will fall behind. We would lose tremendously in our businesses, and we will lose customers, and we will find ourselves in very much compromising positions. So I think that it's quite important for us to stay up to date. I do know about cryptocurrency. I think this is something that is very, very interesting. We all know about Bitcoin. When Bitcoin came
Yeah.
out, I was also one of those that said, "Huh, I will wait and see." I was not a risk taker at that time, and I said, And now I wish that I had jumped on the bandwagon back then, so that it turned out to be a very much a big success. So if I had stayed up to date with the times at that time. But basically, it is something very important. What I've seen, even on the political level, with countries where I know one of the issues a lot of the Caribbean countries were having was the being placed on a blacklist, where whether they are blacklisted and they can't, they have to use the U.S. market, the U.S. market, but the U.S. Banks to, send the monies, et cetera, et cetera. Now cryptocurrency will put a challenge to that. One of the problems that one of the problems that the islands was seeing is that if they were blacklisted, how would tourists be able to spend the money on the islands? How would you be able to order shipments from the United States to the various islands? And it would have become a challenge because you would have to use the US banking system, and the monies have to travel through that this current system that they have. Now with cryptocurrency, it doesn't. It's a whole different ball game. So if countries start to invest in cryptocurrency and try to exchange, barter with cryptocurrency, it will be very interesting to see how that dilemma that was there, or still probably is there, will be remedied. I believe then later on they will come with legislation to try to monitor that and try to curtail it. But when it comes to digital technology, it's very difficult to
True.
curtail.
That's true.
So I think
But
that if countries,
when Bitcoin came and this cryptocurrency came, I think many were against it. Many countries did not even legalize it, I think. Until now, it
many
is not.
countries didn't, but now they're starting to rethink. They're starting to rethink because this is the way to, or the direction many countries are going into, at least the big supply countries like China and a lot of the other places there, so it's something to think about. I believe, if I can remember, didn't India come up with one as well?
No.
Not as yet?
They rejected, I think, but they did not come up with one. No, I don't think so. No.
Okay.
I just remember one day my father called me to the office and he's like, somebody is selling him Bitcoin at a very low price, and I was like, just buy it. And next day, I think the prices shooted up like anything. We would have been multi-millionaires today.
Indeed, indeed, and this is the direction that e-commerce is going into. It e-trading, everything is now, electronic.
Yes.
So I think that, like I stated before, it's inevitable. It's something that it's a whole paradigm shift on the way we need to think, the way we need to see our future, and also see where technology is taking us in the future. And in order to stay up to date, we need to be very much abreast to the new technologies that are out there and what's happening.
When we had the first session with the president of Mauritius, way back when we started the mentors program, I used the word the new normal. So now we are coming under new normal. The what we were living before March was not normal, and so now there's something new. And until now, I see many people haven't got accustomed to this new normal. For some reason, they're not getting adapted to it. They're just cribbing even what used to happen, what has happened after March. They just want to go back before March.
Things will never be the same. We just have to adapt. And that's humans. You just have to learn how to adapt. Of course, with change, you will have protests. You will have persons defying the change and wanting to follow the way things used to be. But this is the importance of being able to adapt and being agile. You have to be able to be flexible, because you would have a very hard time not being able to adapt and also to assimilate into new discoveries, new changes, you name it. And I think that is really that's an individual choice. But the moment you make the choice not to, you also have to accept the consequences that come with it as well. So
I just say that, you do not have to be master of everything, at least have knowledge of everything, what is going to happen, what is coming up, just being updated with things, so that at least when you're sitting in with few people, you know what to talk, and you're not just like, zapped that I do not know anything. Ma'am, last question I want to ask before we conclude. What are some of the gender issues you see in the Caribbeans or otherwise?
Well, definitely, I see, like many other countries, we are a lot focused on, if you look throughout the Caribbean, females are a lot in the certain sectors, such as education. You have social affairs, teachers, nurses in the health sectors. What we're missing throughout the Caribbean is the area of technology, and how the Caribbean countries will tackle this issue is yet to be known. I do know that there's currently a World Bank funded project called the CARD DTP, which is the Caribbean Digital Transformation Project. It's funded by the World Bank, and they are busy trying to countries such as Dominica and Grenada, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines. They have taken part in this whole digital transformation project, and I know that they are busy with it. So I love that idea. What I'm missing, and I'm not sure, because one of the components of the project is to better equip individuals and businesses across the region for jobs and the economy of the future. And when you talk about better equipping, I always want to ask, will females be involved? And I'm hoping that is the case, because I would truly like to see young girls head into that direction. And I know that there is at this current moment, because it also exists throughout the world, and there's no difference here, it's an area that it's direly lagging. Yeah.
Ma'am, just a personal question. I mean, I ask every leader when they speak to me. United Nations have all these parameters about gender inequality, digitalization, protecting oceans, water, etc., especially peacekeeping missions. Why the world is still not able to achieve it? I mean, we know what is right. We know peace is good, right? We know war is bad. for example. But why are we not able to do it?
I think that it's a collective effort. It's a collective effort on an international level, regional and local level as well. I know that persons who have exposed me to companies, a company in Estonia, who are willing to change. I met this young man, he's part of Inspiring. He developed this company called Inspiring, Arthur Delau. And persons like that who are looking at the challenges of this world and looking at the different, with technology and how to better such, you have to want to make those changes. You have to be able to want to make a difference within society. So it's a societal issue as well, but it's something that needs to be tackled globally. It is not just only, we know what's right. The question is, why aren't we doing what's right? It's the same thing with climate change as well. But I believe that with individuals that are like-minded, companies and businesses on an international level that are like-minded, we can tackle those issues. But those issues need to be prioritized, and you definitely need advocacy behind of it. Persons, say it again?
When world leaders say that we are coming to an agreement, we are doing these agreements, there are millions of agreements which are there. Still, we are standing at the ground level and we are not able to achieve. We are thinking about 2030, right? Why not to happen tomorrow if we all make a decision today?
You are so right. And like I said, it's all about advocacy and promoting certain subject matters and making sure that you have the right network, the right groups that can give the peer pressure to specific organizations and world leaders to address specific issues. But in that context, I would say that you can look at specific groups. It's all about interest. If people have the interest, they will pursue it. The same way that we look at how to resolve certain issues with technology. And sometimes, I think that sometimes we don't have to wait on world leaders. We can make changes ourselves. We can make the changes ourselves. I would tell you this much. The moment I got exposed to the possibilities out there with digitalization, that was it for me. But I had to first be exposed to it. I had to experience how other countries do it. And it made such an impact on me. I know that we can do better. So I take what I've learned from abroad, from the exposure that I have been experienced, and I take that and then I said, okay, how can I bring this to the Caribbean islands? How can I make specific contacts with specific persons to say, listen, this is something that is needed. And then based on that initiative, I can then move forward from there and see how that government, or whether it's that prime minister or you name it, would promote it for their country. And then you start, so on some levels, it can start from a local interest, on some levels, regional, and other levels on the international level. But you have to want the change. Not everybody wants change, because in the end of time, sometimes it doesn't make money. And when money is involved, you have to say, will it take priority?
True.
Depending on the amount of change that it will bring. And it's a very interesting, we could ask a lot of questions, but we will be talking forever, but yeah.
So that was the end, and I really like the way you said collective efforts at international, regional, and local levels. That is very important, and not everyone needs a change. Some people are happy in their own comfort zones, I think.
Indeed. And you don't have to put this one, but I wanted to tell you this part. Even with, you see that when you talked about climate, you spoke about how can we make change? And you spoke about world leaders. I can recall in one meeting when we were talking about climate change and why small island development states are the ones that are emitting the less toxic into the environment. So why aren't there more funding for Caribbean countries or small island development states? So you have Polynesia and all those countries as well. And imagine the fight to make the issue a priority, because it's our lives. We are the ones that are experiencing disaster after disaster based on what is being emitted out there into the ozone layer. Our hurricanes are intensifying. So as you say, as just like you said, how do you get your agenda on the forefront? You just keep lobbying. Keep lobbying, and there's no difference when it comes to making different changes. It's the same thing with digitization. But I tell you this much, I can state that this pandemic has made us open our eyes and be more receptive to digital transformation.
So that was really, you have pushed me also to adapt to new things. I will definitely do that as a key take from your session. So thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for your time. It was really an honor to have you. And I really look forward working with you next year as well on different projects which we are coming up with. And any last comments you would like to say for ending the year and ending the mentors? You have seen we have had presidents from Mauritius, Croatia, Ecuador, and people from Africa. So any last point, any feedback you would like to give us?
Well, I would first like to thank you, Professor, for the opportunity to have this platform to speak on the issue of gender and digital transformation. It has been quite a good experience, and definitely I look forward in working with you in 2021. Let me wish you happy holidays and a successful 2021. I love what you're doing. And indeed, you asked the question, how do we make the change? I believe that you have started by gathering ex-politicians and world leaders to this platform and forum to give their opinions on specific topics and share with the rest of the world on various issues. So kudos to you. And I'm sure that next year will be even better than this one.
You know, I was continuously asked this question, and since it's the last session, and the reason to start mentors was I had something else in mind. You know, just to bring out experiences on mental health and other related issues. But there is something that I generally get connected to, you know, people who are a lot experienced, especially in political domain. And I try to build my network to understand how they have worked, how they have functioned, you know. And so many people ask me that is it a political organization or it's a mental health organization? So my only response on this last day is that bringing people like you, the world leaders who have actually contributed to certain domains, and learning from your own ground experiences, because politicians are something they have to deal with people also, policies also. They are the ones who make policies also at international level and global level.
Indeed.
Learning from your experiences, people like you, you know, it definitely broadens the horizons, because you people have actually worked on the ground in the parliament, in the UN, for example. Yes. I have listened to your the speech in the UN when you were discussing about digital transformation and gender transformation there as well, when you were the Prime Minister. So it's really thank you to ma'am, and Merry Christmas to you, to your family, and happy holidays to you, and Happy New Year. We'll stay in touch.